on the news or on social media, things have not really taken a turn for the better yet at Columbia. Arguably, it's probably doing the worst of all the schools. Today we had a major sit-in in Barnard's library, and Barnard is like our sister school, so it's still a part of Columbia, but it's still like it's its own institution. And we got no correspondence about anything from the university. There was then a bomb threat where all my friends had to shelter in place if they were on Barnard's campus, and the protesters wouldn't leave the building. They had to get the NYPD involved. And this is the first time since the encampments last spring that the administration has actually had the NYPD on campus. There have been multiple instances where they should have come and arrested students, and no one took action to get them on campus because they have to be allowed on by the university. We had a similar situation last week where students took over an academic building. The NYPD did not come. The administration didn't do anything. There were no repercussions for the students. And yeah, it's a broad overview, but
Yeah, it's insane. And can you tell us a little bit about what happened? I know last week, you texted me after your friend was basically trapped in a building. And of course, we won't name her, but I know you told me she's Israeli, where all these mass protesters storm a building, and are screaming, "Let's globalize Intifada." And obviously, where she's from, if people are going to say, let's go buy intifada. It's not just a slogan. They're actually going to kill Jews. So I can't imagine how fearful she must have felt. So what was that like getting messages from her and feeling like I have to go help my friend because the school's not doing anything about this?
so I was supposed to go meet my friend after class 4 p.m. last Wednesday just for coffee. And I'm leaving my class and she texts me. She's like, I'm leaving Milbank now. Oh my gosh, I can't breathe. Like, look at what's going on. And she sends me pictures. She's like, can you come here? Like, I can't leave the building. And basically, public safety, which is like our school's private security, wouldn't let her leave, but they let the protesters stay in the building. They told her to stand back for her own safety, but wouldn't let her exit. So I had to go through the back door so she could get out. There's tunnels underneath Barnard, so we left that way. But she was locked in the building with these crazy protesters. All afternoon classes were canceled. So it's just a bizarre situation.
And then in the end, I know like a professor was hospitalized even.
It was one of the public safety officers had to go to the hospital.
Public safety officer was awful. And the school has yet to take meaningful action.
Columbia hasn't even sent out anything to the broader university. I know Barnard got an email, but we haven't received anything.
Awful. And Lily, I know I want you to share a little bit about your experience at the University of Arizona, especially regarding the state of Jew hatred. I know you told me you're transferring back to Tulane. I'm so excited for you. And I want to hear a little bit about what led you up to make that decision.
Yeah, so I would love to speak on that. I'm not sure if I'm pinned, but hang on a second, or you can pin me. So for me, there's been a lot of anti-Semitism on this campus, and unfortunately, this a lot of the students on this campus are the most apathetic people I've ever met in my entire life. Like I'm always the one who's like going to administration and reporting and trying to get the Federation involved. But unfortunately, the Federation can only do so much because the university has not issued a single statement for a single anti-Semitic incident that has occurred on this campus the entire school year. And they just got a new president in November, like around like a couple weeks after October, the 1 year anniversary of October 7th. In like November, just in November, there was a huge protest around Kristallnacht about where people were walking around campus. It was about 100 people, both SJP, MENA, like all the anti-Israel groups, as well as outside community members chanting, globalize the Intifada, they were threatening to kill Jews. They had a banner in the front that said, number one cause of death to children is Israel. And it was just so disheartening to see this and to see my university continually stand by and do nothing. I mean, just a few weeks ago, the dumpster behind my sorority house, and I'm an AE5, so I'm in a Jewish sorority, was vandalized with Free Gaza. And to see no one handle that, and for me to have to be the one to stand up and say this is wrong, what are we going to do about it, and then to get backlash for that is just incredibly insane. And it's just insane like how normalized Jew hatred is on this campus. And like my friend, she every single day, like she's visibly Jewish, like they'll look at her and they'll be like, oh my God, like you need to get a nose job. You're showing too much Jew. And it's just like, it's stuff like that. And, it's just, it's really insane. And the school's not in a good place right now. And so there has to be more action taken, but I cannot be the only one who wants to take action. There has to be other students who are willing to stand up to this and who are willing to acknowledge and admit that this is a problem instead of passing it on and saying, well, we don't go to Columbia. Well, we don't go to Harvard. We don't go to Yale. It's not a problem here. Like, well, it is a problem here because I certainly feel less safe on this campus than I did even last year at Tulane with the community. So my biggest advice, if there's any prospective students on here, is to go to the school you want to go to and that the community is everything. Having a strong Jewish community is everything. Don't let anti-Semitism deter you from going to a school.
It's interesting to hear you say that because obviously you've experienced significant anti-Semitism at both schools. And last year, especially at you were at Tulane when it was the height of anti-Semitism right after October 7th, in 2023. But you want to go back to that school because would you say the biggest reason is you just feel more alone at that school? Because even if there was more anti-Semitism at one school, it's the support. There's a lack of action at Arizona.
Yeah, it's the lack of action, the lack of community. Also, like, I just like really miss New Orleans. Like, there's no place like it. I love it. And I didn't even realize like how much I loved this school until I actually left. Like, it's just such a fun place. And there's something so special about it, and the people are incredible. And like going to a smaller school, like there is that community aspect of it. And there's just so many Jews. And like I know no matter what happens, like if I plan an event or like if, like if I plan an event, I don't have to beg people to show up. There are gonna be people who have to show up versus like this year I've had to like beg people and then even then they don't show up or they tell me they're gonna show up and they don't show up. So it's just like a lack of community at the school as well is also driving Jews out. In addition, they're also defunding because the school has a money problem. They're defunding the Jewish Studies department, which is also my second major. So that's another issue.
And I think it's super interesting to hear from Bali. You're a senior at Tulane right now. So I would love to hear what the state of Jew hatred is like at your school, and especially compared to last year, after October 7th, 2023. Has there been any improvements?
Yeah, well, first off, I'm so excited that Lily's coming back. I'm so happy that there are going to be other powerhouses on campus. I know you mentioned at the beginning of the call that we're not seeing encampments, and I would actually disagree with that. At Tulane, we have these library sit-ins. I just mentioned at Columbia, they are encampments, and we need to call them what they are. These students have found a way to lock themselves inside buildings with bathrooms, with vending machines, with all the resources that they need to hunker down and just stay and apparently free Palestine, right? And so I know Lily just mentioned this. We work really closely with the Federation of New Orleans. They're incredible, and the head of Jewish federations nationally spoke to us and shared about time, place, and manner. And I think that is prevalent on all college campuses today. So at Tulane, there are still rallies after the encampment last spring. Our SJP equivalent, they're called Students for a Democratic Society, they were disbanded from campus. They're not a recognized student organization anymore. Yet the university continuously will gift these students backdoors to support to support terrorists, to call out Jewish students, to spread their hatred, etc., under the pretext of opposing the Trump administration most recently. And so going back to time, place, manner, by holding their events against Israel with bloody hands on day 500, these are all things that we continuously see. And I think the most astonishing part of it is that Tulane thinks they're doing well, which is crazy. And to anybody on here, I think you should 100% come to Tulane. As Lily said, we have the best Jewish community I could ever ask for here. We have over 700 students in SSI. We're the largest chapter internationally. You will have support here, but it doesn't mean that we're not facing anything. And in terms of anti-Semitism on campus, we just continue to see the selective reinforcement of the rules. the university took down our chalk. I wrote like love hummus, not Hamas, stuff that's really just not controversial. And at 8 a.m., we did it at like midnight. At 8 a.m. the next morning, they had the maintenance team going out and erasing that, scrubbing it for hours to get it off, even though it was just chalk. And they left up the names of hundreds of Palestinians that were supposedly killed in Gaza. So it's so evident that there is an issue at our school, and administration continuously tries to come up with reactive short-term solutions, but obviously very subpar measures have been taken to support Jewish students and our allies on campus.
Right, because condemning terrorists is so controversial,
Right.
unfortunately. Um, what would you say is the hardest part at your school? Is it the faculty that are involved with these pro-terror organizations? And do you have that? Is it the students and your classmates? What is the most challenging, or is it all just so frustrating?
As a leader of the pro-Israel movement, it's definitely daunting to my personal relationships with some of the most extreme Jew haters and terrorist supporters on campus. But I'll say overall, it's to earn a seat at the table with administration. I was emailing them for days and hours leading up to that rally on day 500, and I kept reiterating my request to meet. Not once was it acknowledged in any of the emails. And there are some basics things that I'm just bringing to their attention. And then the university administrations across the country get upset when students voice their, experiences on social media. And I tell them, I'm coming to you in good faith. The pro-Israel side does not do encampments. We sit down at the table, we walk in, and we're grown-ups and we're mature and we act like it. But to not even have responses from our university. I know friends at Columbia obviously experience the same things, countries, universities around the country. I mean, it's just a complete and utter failure on the university's part.
Well, it's interesting, and I think that's like the most frustrating part. You just said it right there. Like you are trying to have communication with them in good faith, and you actually want to see improvement, and all you're asking for is safety for Jewish students on campus. Um, where do you kind of go from here? Like, what is your biggest mission in terms of change when you feel like your university may want to do the right thing, but it doesn't matter because they're not? So like what's your biggest goal, I guess, as you're a senior in before you leave?
Definitely empowering the younger students to keep going even after this phase of the war is over, and once we get all of the hostages home, Berkshire, like this, we have to be proactive. If this war has taught us anything, it's that we can't be reactive. And in terms of when they're not responsive, it doesn't matter. I just walk to their offices in person. Like they're gonna hear from me. They're gonna hear from us at Tulane. Just like save us all a little bit of extra time and respond to the email. And so lucky, obviously, we have Lily coming back and other incredible leaders. So Tulane is in good hands.
I absolutely love that. You're relentless and it's amazing. And that's why you're an EJH fellow. Um, so also Harley, I know you kind of spoke about like the faculty. You also might sometimes cancel class or end class early to push students to go to these pro-Palestine, anti-Semitic protests. What does that feel like as a student? When did like is it your peers professors, or have you had that personal experience with the professor? Like what does that feel like as a student?
I've had that happen a few times personally, and I know it's happened with some of my friends as well. I mean, I find it so frustrating. I come to class because I want to learn and engage with the class. So when they say, I'm going to cancel, I had a professor cancel after 10 minutes, and she's like, okay, go on the quad, go join on the quad. And I'm like, it makes no sense to me. And I also think something that I find incredibly frustrating is when, um, these sort of anti-Semitic remarks and issues surrounding, obviously, the war is brought into classes that have nothing to do with politics, with, Middle Eastern Jewish studies, etc. Like nothing related. Like I'm not sure why in a research methods class or in any other of like my public health classes that I take, like why that is brought into it. So that's something that I personally find extremely frustrated. Like if I wanted to talk about geopolitical conflicts, I would be in a poli sci class, but I want to be in the classes that I want to be in. Um, so I find that really frustrating. And I think something kind of the biggest thing going on at Emory right now is this idea of open expression. So following in the spring when the encampments were going on, Emory shut that down very, very quickly. I think within the matter of hours, the police were called, the encampment was cleared, and the student body, faculty members were very, very upset about that because they said that was a violation of students' rights to express themselves freely on campus. And at the end of the summer, the president issued an addendum to the to the open expression policy, basically saying no encampments, no overnight protests, as well as one other thing that I can't remember. But right now, a lot of students, faculty, and other members of the community are really pushing back on that and are trying to get that changed to allow encampments and allow overnight protests, which is just so insane to me. Time, place, and manner restrictions exist for a reason. And so the thought that student safety is not thought of and part of the conversation is just so absurd and so frustrating. Um, Luckily, and I think Emory is similar to Tulane in that we have a very large Jewish population that is very, very close. We're all very connected. And that's something that's been amazing, is how close and well connected the Jewish community is. But if it wasn't, if we weren't as strong of a community as we are, I think things would be really, really difficult here.
Wow. And would you say it's gotten better or worse or the same since October 7th, 2023? And
Um,
substantial as the war is
so
going on, or is it because of faculty?
sorry, my dog is with me. Um, I would say obviously things were really bad in the spring, as I'm sure they were at most universities. And since last academic year, I would say the anti-Semitism has gotten, it's still there. It's gotten a little less obvious, but a lot more insidious, in my opinion. I think a lot of students and other members of the community have found ways to be anti-Semitic without breaking university rules. They've gotten smarter about it, and that's making it a lot harder for the university to crack down on the anti-Semitism because it's being done within the scope of what's technically allowed on campus, which brings a whole other set of issues is to like why is this allowed? Like why is any form of this allowed? And
Do you have
probably
examples of these like covert incidents of anti-Semitism? And I know what makes them so hard is that they're literally so hard to name. It just happens.
yes.
But
But
it's
for example, like there's a ton of chalk. Emory has a policy regarding like chalk and flyers, etc. And we had an issue where there was anti-Semitic chalk, and then um, a group of students, I'm not sure, were trying to like erase that chalk, and the students got in trouble who were erasing the chalk got in trouble for like squashing the open expression of the group that chalked anti-Semitic things on campus. So,
like what
um,
was the action taken against them, or they just kind of got a talking to, which is annoying.
honestly, I'm not totally sure. Um, but just things like that, where like there's just very sort of small people are being anti-Semitic within the confines of what they know they're allowed to do in terms of the code of conduct. Um, so yeah, it's definitely hard. Definitely there. And I think the university kind of needs to think long and hard sort of about their open expression policies, code of conduct, etc., what is and isn't allowed on campus because the Jewish community at Emory is definitely hurting right now.
And as a senior, what is your biggest hope, I guess, that you can kind of make? What's your last impact that you kind of want to make, and what gives you hope to kind of know that Jewish students are going to be okay when you leave?
I think knowing that we have so many incredible Jewish organizations on campus. Our Chabad here is absolutely incredible. That the Chabad family is amazing. So I know that the Jewish community is in very good hands with them. But sort of in terms of my impact, I sit on sort of a shared governance board at Emory, and I have been voicing at our meetings that there needs to be changes to what's going on right now in order to protect the Jewish community and just continuing to voice that And even when they don't listen to me, I'll keep saying it. And to really push from that university policy perspective in order to ensure that, generations of Jewish students that come after me at Emory are safe and protected. Because Emory has always been known to be a very safe place for Jewish students, and I think it's worth trying to protect that.
Absolutely. And Isabel, for you, I know you noted that anti-Semitism actually feels worse this semester at Wake Forest. So, yeah, tell me a little bit about that and what the state of Jew hatred is on campus.
I think firstly, I just want to say, Daisy, thank you for putting together this excellent panel of my peers for this call. I'm honored to be a part of it. And thank you to everyone who's watching and taking the time to hear different Jewish perspectives, because I think a lot of people think that just because headlines are going away, I think anti-Semitism, I think both on campuses, but in the world as a whole right now, it's not going away. It's just changing. It's modifying itself. Um, at Wake Forest, we're in a really unique position. I think in the sense that a lot of it's coming from the professors. Not as much. I think we have the Jewish population at Wake has a lot of support. However, the professors at our university are pretty aggressive. I've had, as a Jewish student leader on my campus, people often come to me to report things before they go to administrators or anybody. And I have had incidences of people this semester telling me that they were told that Hamas isn't that bad. And I had two different events canceled by the university that I was planning on Israel and just providing different conversations. And I think, especially in a post October 7th world, a lot of private universities want to show that they care about their Jewish students. And I feel like the lesson that I have been feeling is that like my Judaism by administration is tolerated and accepted to a point. They like it when I'm planning events that make them look good, when I do a sellout event with a Holocaust survivor, or when I'm planning vigils or things for the high holidays so that the school doesn't have to formally put anything on. They love it. But when I want to have a slightly more uncomfortable conversation that we can't have because no professor at my university is willing to speak positively about Israel, we can't even get an SSI at my school because no professor is willing to be the faculty advisor. And without a faculty advisor, you can't form a club. We've been trying for 5 years at my school. And so it's very frustrating feeling like the school is treating me almost like a child. Like, hush, hush, go in the corner, don't create problems for me. I'm the Israel girl of my campus. Like, we don't have an Israel organization. Um, I kind of admit, which is hard, but at the same time, I'm willing to take that on. But it makes me very nervous for that next generation because there is really a lack of Jewish infrastructure. I'm sure a lot of people on this call, I've actually met Harley's Rebbitzin, but Chabad's really become a haven for me. And I think a lot of Jewish students, because the beauty of it is that it's an off-campus house. And the school kind of can't touch that. And it's honestly become a sanctuary. And I think universities, especially private ones, it's really, I think, up to a point that they like the Judaism. And my Judaism is unconditional. I am proud to be a Jew. And that doesn't stop just when the pretty little bow events aren't happening anymore. So I think at Wake Forest, I think I felt it more. And it makes me nervous for the next generation of Jewish students because I think a lot of private universities, especially, they don't want negative press or their name in the headlines. And I think they'd rather have us quiet down versus actually having uncomfortable conversations. And only by having uncomfortable conversations do you actually grow as a community and you create a space that's becoming better for Jews. I'm a senior. The senior class is 7% Jewish at Wake Forest. The freshman class is 12%. So they're taking more and more Jewish students, which means the school has more responsibility to create a safe learning environment and a safe campus. So I think that's part of the reason why I feel like it's getting worse. It's because it's adapting. Anti-Semitism, it's the oldest hatred in the book. And so it's one of those things where it's always gonna bear its ugly head and it's just gonna adapt. So it might have looked like the encampments, but now it's libraries, now it's social media. We have to meet it where it's at to help fight it. So that's kind of my spiel on why I think it's getting worse
Absolutely.
and better.
Yeah, well, what I think, I mean, the conversation I hate having the most is the whole JVP conversation because some of them actually are Jewish, but they're just using their Judaism, when they don't even culturally even feel connected to Judaism, but using whatever name they have in order to refute what it means to be Jewish. Um, and I know because I kind of want to talk about the amazing work you did on the anniversary of October 7th. But before we get there, I know one of your most challenging obstacles has actually been a Jewish faculty member. So is that still an issue for you? And what is being done about it? Because I know this faculty member is tenured.
Yeah. There's a running joke in the Jewish community at Wake Forest that there's certain people who have a countdown till I graduate. Um, and I think it's really sad that I think that there's professors who are so invested in what a student is doing. Um, I was planning an event with a IDF soldier, and three Jewish professors at Wake Forest wrote a letter against a student-run event. And they basically bullied me and bullied the university. Um, and I found that very sad. I have one of the board members of JVP is a tenured professor at Wake Forest. I've actually taken his class and I've taken class with his wife. And it's very scary because I think Jewish students, I'm a very proud Jewish student, but I can't take classes. I'm in the Jewish studies department. No Jewish students really can. And how are we supposed to grow or learn when we are made to feel excluded and unwelcomed? I know a Jewish student who was told by a professor that they weren't welcome in his class, like that he was not welcome in her class. And I think it's very hard because these professors have more power. Like I fight, and I think we all do. I hear often about the amazing work that my fellow panelists do. But at the same time, I'm not a tenured professor, and I think it's very daunting when you have to go up against administration and go up against faculty who are tenured and who have resources. So it's very challenging, and it feels like this conversation can't be equal. And if they want to have their conversations, I can't stop that. But I find it incredibly unfair that they won't even let other voices or diverse voices be held on their campus. I think when it came to the fall on my October 7th vigil, um, they tried to host a Hamas supporter the same time at the same day. And it's very scary. I think in some ways, Wake Forest is unique in the sense that our anti-Semitism is led by Jewish professors. I always say that if you have to start your sentence with, as a Jew, your argument is weak. And these are as a Jew people. I can argue for the state of Israel and for the existence of Judaism without ever mentioning myself as a Jewish person. My identity does not validate my talking points. And so I think when you have to use that and you weaponize your Judaism, you have a problem. And I think it's very scary. I think I always say JVP is neither Jewish nor for peace. And so I think having such a leader of it on my campus is scary. But I was on the phone earlier and I was saying this, it's like I can't control what they do, but I can do everything in my power to make spaces for Jewish students and create community and create different events. So the school's canceled two of my events. I'm planning one more on my way out of here. And that's what we do because I was at a conference this past weekend in Chicago with hundreds of other Jewish student leaders. It's like, honestly, the best thing that we can do is continue to be Jewish, continue to have Jewish pride, continue to create spaces for Jewish students. They win when we stop being us. And so doing, even if it's a challah bake with just four girlfriends in your apartment, or it's having a couple people extra over for Shabbat or hanging out, like all of those things, Jewish simcha is so powerful. And we must not forget to do that, even in the face of anti-Semitism, because we are here. We are young, proud. We are the next generation of Jewish voices. And continuing to support that and support even a lot of us are seniors on this call, but continuing the next that for the freshmen. And so that this can continue on our campuses because I love Wake Forest. I would never want it to be a place where Jewish students don't feel welcome. And so that's why I do the things I do for my campus. People often think I go after the university or I want that press for the school because I hate the school. I love it. Go Deeks forever. But Go Deeks includes the Jewish ones. So yeah.
I love that you said that because all the people fighting for Jewish students on that campus, it's not against the university. We're not trying to end and destroy the university. just welcome your Jewish students, and we're not going to not fight for our people to be included in that. I also do want to highlight, though, the incredible work you were able to accomplish on the 1 year anniversary of October 7th, because there was significant anti-Semitism planned for that day, and you were able to stop that. What led you, do you think, to lead you to the success that you had? And what is your advice to other students who may see something that's unjust and want to make a difference but don't know how? How did you find yourself in this role?
Thank you so much. Excellent question. I think the thing is I didn't do any of it alone. I think I definitely am in certain instances often the face of things at Wake Forest because people aren't always comfortable being the person in the meeting or being the person on the news. Um, I we got very frustrated with that speaker. It honestly, the efforts, it was me and four of my friends. We were really frustrated and complaining to our rabbi after a Shabbat dinner. And I kind of got us together and was like, let's not complain, let's try and do something about this. And we were very fortunate in the sense that the school, after quite a bit of pressure, realized that that event was not appropriate to have on campus on that date. But I think my advice is that there's a copious amounts of resources for Jewish students, far more than I knew a year ago, in terms of networks. I think for me, one of the most powerful things I've done is I feel like I've met the me of every campus. And that's a really special feeling, knowing that like I'm not crazy. I'm not the only person who cares about Israel and fights for it on my campus, even if sometimes I have to stand alone and sometimes I stand with people. Or if I have to go into a meeting alone because other students are scared to have these conversations with administrators. So I think there's a lot of resources out there in terms of fellowships, in terms of, for example, for the event that I'm planning with the university. It's not with the university, the event I'm planning in a couple weeks. I don't trust the university not to try and cancel it. So I've successfully applied and am getting the event fully funded by external grants and organizations so that the school couldn't cancel it even if they wanted to. And I have a backup location in place. So leaning on those resources, but a big believer that one of the most powerful tools is education and eloquence. So educate yourself. It's not enough to know that you're right. It's enough, you need to know why you're right. You have to read things that challenge your beliefs. Some of my friends think I'm crazy because I'll scroll Al Jazeera or like SJP Instagram accounts for fun, just to understand where people are coming from so I can build my argument and strengthen my own argument. Educate yourself on the histories, educate yourselves on when Israel hasn't been perfect or Jews haven't been perfect, because education is a very powerful tool. And I also think that being well spoken in tandem is very, very powerful. I can scream all I want. However, I've gone very far in certain instances with the university because I speak measured and I come in with facts and statements instead of just screaming. And I work with the university versus against it. So, know your stuff and know how to say your stuff, I think, is a very powerful tool. And use the copious and copious amounts of resources that are out there for Jewish students, especially these days with campus anti-Semitism on the rise. There isn't an anti-Semitism or Israel advocacy organization out there that doesn't have some sort of program to help students. And so I think that that's kind of my advice to the next generation. And the work's not over. The work won't maybe ever be over, but if you can make your campus 1% better in 4 years, you're on the right track.
Absolutely, I agree. And I think such a big legacy and impact you're having is education. And I know we kind of took a pause from this, but after this call, we should set up a time to meet again because I think one of your most powerful legacies will be explaining like anti-Semitism for dummies, so to speak, what it means to be anti-Semitic. And with that, we really realized when making this presentation, we can't fully explain what anti-Semitism is when people don't even know what it means to be a Jew. So I'm really excited on creating that with you and bringing that to the other fellows because I think you're right. Anti-Semitism education is huge in how we combat Jew hatred. So thank you.
Anti-Semitism 101 coming to a campus near you in fall 2025.
Period. And then also, Olivia, at UPenn, I know you mentioned having difficulties being able to fully express your identity in some of your classrooms. So I'm curious to hear more about that and then also your overall experience, because I know it's actually been pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, Baruch Hashem. I mean, I am a freshman, so I fortunately was not here last spring and even last fall to experience the insane anti-Semitism that occurred on campus, including encampments and protests. I do have to say I'm really pleased with what the university and the administration has done this year to minimize the amount of anti-Semitism on campus. To be completely honest, I have not seen a pro-Palestine flag on campus, and that has just been like a miracle. The University of Pennsylvania has institutionalized a no tolerance policy, meaning that if you do host a protest, a tabling event, um, and an organized event that isn't approved by the university beforehand, you are like it's immediately kicked off and there are punishments. In addition, you can't hang up anything like on school walls or school property without the signs being approved. And therefore, I haven't even seen a pro-Palestine like sign up, which is really, really nice. Like for example, on October 7th, I was bracing myself for crazy amount of protests and just riots, etc. And there was not one pro-Palestine flag on campus all day. And in contrast, there were tables hosted by Chabad and Hillel all over our main walk. Um, and that was magical and really, really surprising. I'm not going to sit here and say that there's no anti-Semitism on campus. I think it's very latent and it lays very latent because it can't otherwise. But like for example, on October 7th, there were two sets of protests. Um, and they were definitely disruptive to the city and we got emails about it, but they weren't allowed to step foot on campus. And I think that's something that's very important because, you know, anti-Semitism exists and it's all around the world, but it's the institution's job to control what they can control, which is control what occurs on campus. And I do have to say that the University of Pennsylvania is doing an amazing job. I also give a lot of credit to Chabad and Hillel for organizing a lot of events. I mean, Shabbat dinner attendance this year has grown tenfold. There are some Shabbat nights where we have over like 100 attendees. It's just insane. They have the Jewish students here and the Jewish communities have really, you know, embraced their Judaism. And maybe it's one of the silver linings of October 7th, but I have to give a lot of credit to Chabad and Hillel for, you know, providing resources and providing spaces for us to explore our Jewish identity. It's from every Thursday we have all girls challah bakes to, for example, yesterday we had a hamantash bake for all ages, all genders. So all of this, there are Jewish studies sessions. There's just so many opportunities for Jewish students to come together. And as a result, the Jewish community here has really grown really strong. It's like a family. And so even if there are people walking around with keffiyehs on, which I do see, I would probably say that I see like two a day. Um, I feel like our community is so strong where it's like we have each other and it's like you are pathetic. Like there are two of you walking around like that a day. Like look at the Jewish community where it's like we don't even have enough seats in the Chabad house for our Shabbat dinners. One thing that I did touch on, um, where I feel like there is an issue is inside of the classrooms. It's sad to say, but I do see a lot of Jewish students acting very passive when it comes to not feeling as though they can fully express their Jewish identity or write about what they want to write about because of fears of having of you know of their professor not liking them and not giving them a good enough grade because they're talking about Israel or their Jewish identity. Um, so, like for example, in my writing seminar class, which is a mandatory class that all freshmen have to take, I in complete honesty do not feel comfortable writing a white paper on anything that has to do with my Judaism or Israel because it's not only graded by my professor, but it's graded by four other professors. And unfortunately, we are in a place where you you kind of expect anti-Semitism. You expect that there will be it's inevitable almost that there will be a professor who is anti-Semitic. But other than that, where in the classrooms, students definitely don't feel comfortable fully expressing their identities, which is something that needs to be addressed. The University of Pennsylvania and the Jewish community has never been stronger.
That's amazing. And I have a few thoughts on that. One, I remember when I went to college, this was even before October 7th, and I wrote a paper, it was one of the required writing classes, and I wrote a paper about my Judaism in Israel. And my other friend who's Jewish in the class, she can validate this, but like it was so clear that the professor was so anti-Semitic and didn't like that. And it was so bad I had to actually transfer writing classes because there was no way she was going to grade me fairly because it was just so frustrating. So it is sad that that is such a shared struggle amongst many Jewish students, especially in these required writing classes and the humanities classes. So that is something that needs to change. Um, but I do think, and I kind of want to go into that more, how much of a miracle it really is, how much UPenn has really cleaned up its act. I mean, I remember when we spoke to Ayal last year, and he had a lot of grievances, and rightfully so, because there were anti-Semitic speakers coming on to your campus on Jewish holidays like Yom Kippur. But I do think it is evident how much, especially a testament to your experience, how much Tulane has cleaned up its act. So what do you think it specifically is that your school's doing that like a school like Columbia maybe isn't doing? And I know you're not probably keeping up to date too much with what's going on at all of your schools, but what do you think other universities and administrators can really learn from with your school? And what can our fellows maybe do to kind of share that so other schools can kind of clean up their act?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the University of Pennsylvania and how they've cleaned up their act this year goes to show that the university does have the power to, stop anti-Semitism from infiltrating their campuses. I think the fact that there is a zero tolerance policy here for, um, I would say it's driven by a zero tolerance policy for hate, but obviously you can't say that. So it's a zero tolerance policy for protests that aren't approved by the administration, really keeps our campus clean from a lot of anti-Semitism that, would occur if they didn't have that. Students are afraid of, facing academic consequences of maybe not being able to attend school, of being kicked out. These students that are protesting on other campuses, like they put on this persona that, they'll fight for Palestine, they'll be arrested, like they're so tough, they're willing to risk everything that their life has to offer to fight for this cause. Yeah, like if you really take a closer look, they are afraid. And that's why we don't see it at Penn and you see it at other schools, because these students know that they won't face consequences for their actions, for disturbing classes, for barricading buildings, for camping in. I think that's the biggest thing, is that the institutions need to be clear on, we have a zero tolerance policy and you will face consequences if you do not respect the rules of our institution, which unfortunately I don't see a lot of institutions like Columbia taking that heavy hand like how Penn did this year.
Exactly. There's actually action behind their words and there is consequences for Jew hatred. Um, and it shows that it works when there are consequences and consequences are enforced, you'll see less Jew hatred. So I definitely think that gives us hope, at least that, I mean, it's not like your school was great before. It wasn't, and it really has drastically changed. So I think that gives me and everyone else on this call hope. And now I want to hear from our Canadian fellows, and Alex, I'll get to you after. But I want to hear from Cooper, who's representing York University, and Uriel Matan, who's representing the University of Guelph. Can you fill us in on the Save Jew Hatred on your campuses and maybe in Canada in general? Um, Cooper, why don't you go first? I
Uh,
think, oh, I hear
Coop
you.
isn't miking.
Uriel Matan, how about you go while he's figuring out his mic.
Sure
I saw
thing.
that you said that anti-Semitism was actually better this semester than it was last semester. So I'm curious to hear the
Better
development.
is honestly kind of an understatement. Honestly, it feels almost out of place. I'm hearing about the pandemonium at Columbia and Wake Forest and all that, and at Guelph, it's been very minimal.
And is
There was
that a change from October 7th, 2024?
Yeah,
Great.
I should clarify.
That's
Post October 7th, 2024, they had their protests and all that across, I should add, across in the middle of the campus, across from our October 7th exhibit. Um, you know, aside from like a minor thing here and there, we had our memorial ceremony later that night, and someone yelled "Free Palestine" right as someone was speaking about the war and all that. Um, but aside from that, it's been very minimal. You see the odd politically active art student walking around with a keffiyeh who doesn't know what that even symbolizes. You see the odd person reposting Free Palestine, whatever, on their story. The odd non-Arab person, I should add. But aside from that, it's very minimal. For the first time in months, um, we painted the can. Oh, I should clarify this. In the middle of our campus, there's a cannon, and there's a tradition at the University of Guelph where a club or someone running for student council paints it, AEPI, my frat, and a bunch of other Greek life organizations. We've painted it together. It's a wonderful community thing. And so we had a memorial for the Bibas family on campus. It was very big. It attracted a lot of attention. It got featured on Chabad Lubavitch HQ's Instagram page. It was massive. And we painted it orange. Nothing that even said Israel. We just had the names Shiri, Kfir, Ariel. We had a yellow ribbon. That was it. 2 days later, for the first time in months, they spray painted it over with Free Palestine, with the flag, with release the Palestinian hostages, yada yada yada. Bit rich referring to someone serving several life sentences as a hostage, but they spray painted that in the snow. They spray painted a red triangle on it, and I saw them painting it. Funny enough, late at night, I was coming back, and I saw them paint it. And I'm always wearing this around my chest, a large Star of David. I'm known for that on campus. Um, I see them painting it, and we've got a very tight, but a very quite large Jewish community here. I sent word out. Someone called campus security. They cleaned up the red triangle. They spray painted in the snow. A few of the guys came by later with shovels and mucked it up completely, just, whatever, for schmutz their message. Here in Guelph, the Jewish community, I'd like to say, is thriving. It's growing. We have a Chabad, and every week we get anywhere between 130 and 150 people coming for Shabbat dinner. So many, in fact, that we have to fit people in the garage and in the basement. We have a very big Hillel. We have a very strong Hillel. We have a growing AEPI chapter that I am proud to say I'm a member of. We have a brand new SSI that we've just started last semester, and it's growing and it's been thriving. Um, yeah, at the end of the day, if I could give the rest of y'all any advice, grow your Jewish community. Be out there, be friendly, be inviting. Invite non-Jews to Jewish events too. Um, a week from now, we've got Purim. Um, I have a buddy of mine from U of Ottawa, a Jew, and I've just hyped it up so much. He's coming to Guelph, a 5-hour drive away, just for Purim. You know, you gotta don't just invite other Jews though. Invite non-Jews to experience the Jewish culture, the Jewish community. And when they see we're not that different, we're fun, we work hard, we play hard. That just brings that warmth. That just brings that Jewish essence into their lives. And like I said, of course, there's, activism for Palestine on campus, and I get it. My department, at the very least, is like a third Arab. I'm in the engineering department. However, there's a nice little bond that goes on there. It's a very much sink or swim environment. Most people are trudging along with a 65 average, barely keeping their head above the water. And the neat little thing about that is, sooner or later, Yitzi and Mahmoud are going to have to collaborate on a project. Mahmoud is going to need help from Shmuli for an exam. Shmuli is going to need notes from Abdul. And you can't go around bringing in politics. Oh, I refuse to study with a Zionist. Oh, so and so's in my group. I can't do it with him. Whatever, yada, yada. You can't bring that in such a sink or swim environment. And that kind of brings people together. They know me by name. They know me as the Jew. They see me with the giant Star of David. They see me wearing my yarmulke. I wrap tefillin in the middle of the Eng building. Who else does that? But there's that respect. And from that respect, there's that bond that forms. And I think it's a beautiful thing. And I'd like for you all to go out there when you go back to university tomorrow. I want you to be a little more proud, have a little more hadar, a little more Jewish pride, bring a little more Yiddishkeit in, and watch it slowly and surely get better.
I love that advice. And I think that's a common theme we've been hearing across our fellows is what's changed the most since maybe last semester before October 7th, 2023, is the amount of Jewish pride and the amount of Jewish people coming in to participate in Jewish events or Chabad and Hillel on campus. And I think seeing all of you guys stick together and grow is really heartwarming and giving all of us hope to keep fighting. So I think that's great. And then Cooper, let's see if it works for you. Oh,
Can you hear
perfect.
me?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I know you've had a
I have
little
my
bit of a
earbuds.
different experience at your work.
Thank you so much, Daisy, for hosting this. I'm so happy to speak and represent the largest Jewish community in Canada at York University. And there are so many issues at my school, mainly revolving around the Students' Union, which is, as I call it, the it's like the the beast within the school. I'm probably getting the analogy wrong. Um, so at my school, they're known as the York Federation of Students, representing all 50,000 students. They they represent their president is a lady by the name of Somar Abu Aziz. She is a Palestinian student who openly supports designated terrorist organizations designated by the Canadian government, terrorist organizations like Hamas, the Houthis, Hezbollah. On her campaign poster, she was wearing a necklace with an AK-47 necklace like pendant on it. Her anti-Semitism is vile, and um, she's who the student body voted in as the head of the students' union. But let's get into the campus climate. So there's frequent aggressive pro-Palestinian rallies, often multiple times a week. Jewish students and Jewish allied students are constantly targeted post October 7th, making it an unsafe atmosphere. I am the director of operations, the SSI chapter at my school, and on October 7th, we had at our table someone throw coffee at our table. Luckily, I was on the opposite end of the table, but it was quite eye-opening, and I actually the next day I was able to spot the guy waving a giant Palestinian flag in front of the main lecture hall. And I took all this information to campus security. I even took it to the police. They did absolutely nothing about it, which was absolutely ridiculous. Um, uh, Many students at my school are afraid to walk on campus on their own, are afraid to be harassed. We actually had the Hillel chapter, the Holocaust education chair, um, recently reported to myself and a bunch of other students an incident that happened to her where one of the Palestinian student collective clubs was actually stalking her and harassing her in class, um, and it was making her really uncomfortable. And the professor did absolutely nothing to prevent that from happening, which was really ridiculous. And I've been in contact with the student who was being harassed to comfort her quite a bit. Um, there's also a lot of PFLP-backed groups like the Students and Workers for the Liberation of Palestine group that do a lot on our campus, and I'm actively trying to get them banned. Um, and there's so many different Palestinian and Muslim clubs on campus that wave their Palestinian Pan-Arabist flag on campus in the middle of the school in the central square, doing their tablings with all their propaganda, making Jewish students extremely uncomfortable. I am terrified whenever I have to walk through that part of campus, and I always make sure that all my necklaces are tucked in because I'd be terrified if they knew I was Jewish. Um, I, um, I I'm guessing you have some questions for me.
Yeah, it's really upsetting and of course devastating to hear how fearful the Jewish community there feels so unsafe to kind of express their Judaism. And it's such a stark contrast, of course, to some of the other schools. What's your biggest call to action for your administrators, or maybe even to the people listening on what we can do to help?
One of the biggest calls to action is um, so read the articles about the president of Students' Union, Somar Abu Aziz. The National Post helped out by one of my friends who's the SSI director of policy, my friend Lotan. He helped out the National Post, one of the bigger Canadian newspapers, to write an article exposing the YFS president. And there's many different ways you can contact the admin at the school. The admin at the school, they aren't the best, but they also aren't the worst. Um, they they try to do things, but it normally ends up being half-assed. Like I heard recently that they're planning on bringing in more police presence, which clap clap to the York at Min. And I actually, from a friend of mine, I found out that the president of the administration at my school is actually um, I think she's married to a Jew, um, and I think she speaks Yiddish at home, which um, eh, I wish she would do more to get the students union banned. But the president of the admin is definitely on our side, but I know she can't be very vocal about it. Also, one of the other things that I wish people would do is advocate for a lot of the anti-Semitic TAs and professors to get fired. I have this TA that I'm actively in a class with. This guy's from Boston, um, and he wears his keffiyeh every single day, to every single tutorial, and refers to Israel as the Zionist entity, and called Gaza a concentration camp, which that was really really a shocking moment. He also constantly mentions the ongoing genocide in Palestine. Um, Constantly makes Jewish students feel uncomfortable. He was trying to encourage us to go to the teach-in at one of the main lecture halls to protest the new increase of police presence on campus. He wanted us to protest, and I think he was probably planning on giving us out extra marks for that. Luckily, I made him stall, and I made it that we wouldn't be able to do that. So I'm proud of myself for making the professor stall time, the TA.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So it's crazy because that's a lot. And it's interesting when I compare schools, York University to like Alex's school at Duke. I know, Alex, you've had a very different experience, thankfully, at Duke. And I'm curious, why do you think your campus is so much different than Cooper's or a school like Columbia University?
It's the million-dollar question that I've been receiving not only since October 7th, 2023, but actually for the past 4 years. I'm now a senior here, and when I got to Duke and founded the chapter of Students Supporting Israel, we actually were off to a very rocky start. So it's not to say that anti-Semitism doesn't exist at this school. It absolutely does. We have Students for Justice in Palestine that arguably is one of the worst online SJP presences I've seen. We have a few professors, for instance, a professor who's teaching a class this semester called Jihad of the Self and Sword. We have a professor who somehow she's a gender sexuality studies, somehow spends so much time online in a day reposting anti-Semitic genocidal content that I don't really know how she has time in the day to teach her classes. And students and professors who got arrested at the encampment down the street at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. So it definitely exists. But at the same time, I'm very proud to say, and I'm very confident in saying, that Duke has 100% been a shining light over the past year and a half. I think our university has been an incredible example, especially relative to what's been going on in so many other campuses. The violence we've seen, the absolute chaos that the universities have spiraled into, as so many of the NJH fellows on this call have discussed. And as for what makes Duke so different, I really cannot attribute it to just one factor. I really think it's a mix of the administration as well as the students. So, as I mentioned, we definitely still have anti-Semitic students, as there are at every school. There's an SJP. I'm also, similar to what Isabel was saying, I'm that girl on campus. I'm that Zionist that people know. You love me for it or you hate me for it. And that's your choice. And it's fine by me because I couldn't care less. But those students definitely still exist. I think the university's administration has been much stronger at Duke than it has in other places. Similar to what Olivia was saying at Penn, I'm glad they finally came around to their senses a little bit. Duke also, I think, has done a very good job of enforcing the same guidelines about protests and demonstrations, and specifically those relating to Israel. And I think they've done a good job kind of enforcing it the same way on both sides, despite the fact that as someone who organizes events quite frequently, it does feel frustrating because Duke, and I'm sure this applies to other schools too, anytime you want to plan an event here, even if it's a small gathering, it's very, very, very procedural. And it takes a long time to be able to book a room on campus and to be able to secure a spot, et cetera, et cetera. And it could be frustrating, especially given the fact that as an NJU Hatred Campus fellow who's dealing with issues of anti-Semitism in Israel, oftentimes this revolves around current events and you need to be able to do something the same day. So yes, it's frustrating on one hand, but on the other hand, I'm very grateful for the fact that the university is holding me as a Jewish student leader to the same standards that they're holding SJP and these other organizations. And it has allowed, I think, for a more safe campus climate overall. So yes, it might be a little bit annoying and kind of feels like I'm being treated like a child in that why can't I plan something so quickly on my own? But at the same time, I've seen a lot of support from the pickets, protests, and demonstrations team and these specific units of student affairs that have been more dedicated over the past year and a half to upholding safety on campus and trying to encourage civil discourse. So from the administrative side, I think it's been great. Duke also has just been very strong in general, even from the beginning. Last October/November, they issued statements, for instance, when people graffitied on our bridge from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Duke actually sent out a statement saying this is not allowed. So while that's amazing, and I think it's a great look for the school, and every school should be doing that, it's the bare minimum, but they're not. That was great. But then at the same time, it's kind of okay, yes, but to what extent are you going to enforce that? Because then at the same time, we see students, such as the head of SJP at our school, who walk around wearing sweatpants that say, literally, she has sweatpants that say, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And they chant, globalize the Intifada. And they do all of the textbook examples of things we've seen these pro-terror students doing on campus. And sometimes it does slide by. But overall, I would say the administration at Duke has been strong. And then, not to drag this on for too long, but it's partially the top down from admin, but also the bottom up. I have never been so proud to be part of the Jewish community at Duke. And it's actually funny. I grew up in Great Neck, New York, which anyone who's familiar with Great Neck knows it is very Jewish. So I always grew up, doing Shabbat dinner, and I'm in a very tight-knit Persian family. And the one reservation I had coming to Duke my freshman year, because I got in on a whim, I really had no idea that I was going to go to this school, and I really think everything happens for a reason and God has a plan. I end up coming to Duke. The one concern I had was there's not going to be a strong Jewish community. There's a chapel in the middle of campus. I don't know anyone really who's there besides one of my friends. And I got here and I met the Chabad rabbi. So to whoever was talking about how amazing Chabad is, I completely echo the sentiment because I knew from that second that I would be fine. And really, my expectations have been exceeded beyond every single year. Our community, thank God, has been growing, thriving, coming together. And I'm very proud to say that as a Jewish and Zionist student leader on this campus, it's really been an honor to work alongside such amazing students. And I know that the work that I've been doing as an NJU fellow alongside these other students and some allies that we have in the community is really paying off because we've been seeing it over the years, and especially in the way that Duke has stood out as such a positive example since October 7th. So while I'm sad I'm graduating this semester, I know that our community is in good hands, and I'm excited to see the way that Duke continues to thrive.
Absolutely, Alex, you're such a force, and I'm so proud of you. And it's been remarkable to work alongside of you as you do killer events. And something that our fellows have been working on has been bringing the documentary October Hate onto campus. And October Hate, for those of you that don't know, is a documentary that follows and showcases the explosion of Jew hatred that happened following the October 7th massacre in Israel. And I guess a question I've been wanting to ask you is, one, what resonated with you most about that documentary? And two, why do you think it's important, or if you do, that other people watch it?
Yeah, so first of all, I think absolutely it is a must-see documentary. So October Hate, as you said, kind of describes and shows on the ground the way that America and the world just spiraled into absolute madness after October 7th. And it features interviews with a lot of people from our community, whether it's student activists, some politicians from both sides of the aisle, organization leaders, and just some celebrities, big activists. So for me, it was very, very impactful in that all of the footage that had been brought together to go into this documentary, because I've been someone who's also been fighting on the front lines, it interestingly enough was things that I'd seen. I remember watching the footage and remembering watching that in real time. Some of the people interviewed in the film are my friends, such as Tessa Wexler, who was the student body president at UCSB. She was in the film a lot. So it's kind of things that I experienced with them in real time. But the way that Wendy Sachs and Deborah Messing, who co-produced the movie, were able to weave it all together was phenomenal, and it was genius, and it really, really, really was just an amazing kind of compilation in a nutshell of the absolutely chaotic, insane reality that we've all been forced to deal with. As for what stuck with me the most, and also I'll say, I think I'm in the minority of the people who have watched all of that stuff. I think for most people who came to the screening at Duke, it was over 200 people. A lot of it was new to them, so definitely impactful. As for what stuck with me the most, I think something that was really insightful in the movie was their entire deep dive into Students for Justice in Palestine and the way that this is not by any means a new development. SJP has been working with American Muslims in Palestine. They've been working with the Muslim Brotherhood. There's literally so many deep-rooted connections to these either terrorist organizations and organizations that are funded by terrorist organizations. So it goes back a long time, and the movie really exposed how SJP and these related organizations are frighteningly a very well-oiled machine, as evidenced by the fact that they had an exact toolkit for this campus resistance and freedom fighting on October 7th. They had it already. They knew it was coming. So it was really insightful, very eye-opening, obviously very scary, but a total must-watch. And I could go on and on about this movie. It's incredible. And I definitely encourage all of the fellows on here or anyone who is able to organize a screening to do so. And also, I'm excited to share the news that the movie was recently picked up for streaming, so it also should be on platforms and in more mainstream theaters soon, which is super exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be in theaters starting March, I believe, 15th.
Oh, very soon. Wow. Yeah, it's
14th.
exciting.
But yeah, I'll never forget watching it and being like, because I graduated right after October 7th, 2020, not right after, right before October 7th, 2023. And I'm like you, Alex, when everything went down and everything was live streamed on social media, I watched every single thing. But as time went on, and of course, like I left my job at NBC and I became the campus manager for our fellowship that we have. Um, but as time went on and as passionate as I am, there are times I'm like, wow, I've lost so many friends that I thought I had over this. And as time goes on, you kind of gaslight yourself. And I'm like, should I blame all like some of my friends who literally said nothing or who may be manipulated? And then I saw this documentary and it's so validating because we were literally seeing terrorism live streamed and the world's reaction was let's justify it, which is so unjustifiable. So I definitely agree, and I think everyone should watch it. And before I wrap up, I kind of wanted to open it up to anyone, if anyone has anything else to say. I know we're going over, but is there anything that you guys want to like ask our audience members if there's anything that you guys think might be helpful or a call to action? I'll open it up for a second. If you guys have anything to say, you just feel free to unmute yourself.
I just want to say thank you all for being here and listening to Jewish student voices. There's a lot of headlines out there, but hearing it, there's nothing quite like hearing it from people who are living that daily experience. And I think keeping your eyes on campuses and keeping yourself engaged, I think is so powerful. Supporting your local communities, go to events, donate. I think we all kind of said the same sentiment of a lot of organizations like Chabad, Hillel are really doing phenomenal work creating places for Jewish students to come together because that often makes it easier for us, I think, just to kind of work together and to fight this stuff. So supporting people in terms of just speaking to students and going to events. And I think it doesn't end with us. And I think just continuing to support Jewish students on the ground and knowing what's going on is so powerful. So to the audience, thank you so much for taking the time to hear from students firsthand.
You may be a proud Jew, be a prouder Jew. Be a good representative for Judaism on campus. Encourage other Jews to participate in Judaism. Hold large events on campus. Invite non-Jews to come. Invite profs to come, faculty members, whatever. We do that too. Uh, Good example. End of the year for Shabbat Hagadol, right before Passover. No pressure because it's a little late in the year, but we have a massive, massive Shabbat dinner in Guelph. Not just in Guelph. This happens in Waterloo, Laurier, all over. Cooper can probably attest that it happens at Chabad York too. Massive, massive Shabbat dinner. Me and one of my buddies were planning to bring a few of our profs to that just to get more people involved. Go out there, organize group to fill in wrappings, light Shabbat candles on campus right before Shabbos in public. Why not? What's stopping you? Be proud. Be proud of your Judaism. Wear your Star of David's loudly and proudly. Baruch Hashem, Mashiach now.
Amen. And I'll just add one thing for anyone on this call. If you know of students at schools who do not have an End Jew Hatred Campus Fellow, let's get them involved. Let's get them involved. Obviously, I'm biased. Obviously, everyone here is biased because we're all End Jew Hatred Campus Fellows. But I think we're also the best source to attest as to how incredible End Jew Hatred is as a movement. The amount of support that they've provided us is incredible, as well as from so many other organizations. But we need students on the front lines because the war that's going on in Israel is not just limited to the Middle East. We're fighting an entirely different battle here in America and in Canada and honestly all over the world. So super important. And that's my message.
Absolutely. And that's a fantastic note to end on. You guys, I am so obsessed with you and all the fellows that we have. You guys are, I mean, you just proved yourself even now, yet again. You guys are truly the most fierce, relentless leaders on your campus. And I couldn't be more proud to have all of you guys as EJH fellows. And you're the reason I love waking up and doing what I do every day. So thank you guys for joining and participating on this panel. And thank you to everyone who's still listening. Truly, I'm just so impressed by all of you guys. It's not easy, but standing up to end Jew hatred, you guys are all making an impact. So thank you. And thank you to everyone. We will send you guys an email out tomorrow, so look out for that. And have a good rest of your evening. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank
Daisy.
you for coming.
Bye.